Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin. Hugh McDonald is with me on this Thursday. We're delighted you could join us, not only on our YouTube channel, but on our podcast as well. And you can watch the programme on the website, and if you download the PLZ Soccer app, you've got all the video views at your fingertips, and over and above that, you'll get all our breaking football news right across the UK, Europe, and globally as well. So there's lots to discuss on the programme, and we'll engage with you throughout if you want to on the YouTube feed. And don't forget, you can pass on to your friends. If you can't catch it live at 4 o'clock, you can watch it at your leisure anytime. It's, of course, uncensored, unbiased and unmatched right across the board. It's absolutely free to watch, and we welcome your opinion because you'll certainly get it from us. The quiz. Always like to start off with a wee question, and with the Champions League semi-final in mind, with Manchester City winning so emphatically against Real Madrid, we thought we'd ask you something with City in mind. When did Manchester City win their only European trophy? What year was that? When did Manchester City win their only European trophy? We'll give you the answer at the end of the programme. Don't Google it. Have a wee guess. Think about the great Manchester City sides, and have a wee think about the year. And I don't think I'm giving anything too much away. When you look back at certain periods in teams' lives, there's always, at the time, I don't know if it was a certain generation, always used to come up with 1, 2 or 3 classic players. You know, Best, Law and Charlton, Bell, Lee and Summerby. It could be that, or it could be, you know, what do you think about when you think of other teams? Is it Messi, Xavi and Iniesta?
Oh, well, now you're talking, you know, absolutely, now you're talking. And even Barcelona have so many. You could think of that front three of Neymar, Suarez and Messi. Yeah. That wasn't bad.
Is it Cruyff, Neskins, Krol?
Or even just Cruyff, eh?
Yeah.
God bless him. I mean, Neskins and Krol were terrific players, but sometimes a player just stands head and shoulders above the rest.
Or Van Basten, Rijkaard and Hullet. Right. There's another 3 that I can think of. I'm going to give you 3 I'm going to give you 3. I don't know why, just because of that question there, and I've set the tone on it, Hugh. But God, it's such a good one. I mean, for Rangers for 72, do you go Greg, St Johnston, or
you really have to have Greg, because Greg just epitomised it. I mean, even in that day, Greg played injured that day. He played in a bad ankle.
Yeah.
In the first minute, he went in and, shall we say, a 30-70 against them and won it. So I think you'd have to put Greg, but I get St Johnston with the goals. But Big Derek, Big DJ played an immense part that night. Dave Smith, I think, was Player of the Year that year as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was a terrific.
It's good
player.
Trying to get without being.
And Sandy.
Well, I was going to say to you, without in any way diminishing the role of other players.
Isn't it? But, you know, but you're such a strong team.
Yeah, and of course the difficult one, which is probably easier for yourself because you were around at that time too, would have been Steen, Murdoch, McNeil. I mean, Murdoch, McNeil, and Johnson.
Yeah, I would think.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I would think they would be the 3 big players in that team. Murdoch, because of his just supreme ability. I mean, Murdoch played the '67 final and brilliant style, playing off his wrong foot because his right ankle was injured, and so he played as a left-footed midfielder and dominated the European Cup final. Big Billy, because he was just Big Billy. And Jimmy Johnson, who was, I think I'm right in saying, was voted the best Celtic player ever.
Yeah.
I think that would be the 3 coming. It's funny you're talking about Ajax there. I was once talking to my good, interviewing Ali Dick from Stirling, who played with Ajax, and he was telling me that he was once part of a front 3, and he said this with a real gleeful smile. He was part of a front 3, which was Van Basten, Bergkamp and Dick.
Yes. It's not a bad front 3, is it? Yeah.
Imagine being involved in that.
I'd be happy
and
with
the manager was? Johan Cruyff.
Yes, there you are. And to be fair, by the way, if you're playing there in your alley dick and you've got those 2 next to you, it's 5 and 10 yard passes. On you go, boys. Crack on. Another man who, if we're talking about players in Scottish football or international football that always seems to hog the headlines and grab the limelight, John McGinn is never too far away from everybody's thoughts. He's the SFWA International Men's Player of the Year. It's been revealed. It's the 4th straight season. He just keeps on winning it.
And he just keeps on getting better and improving, John. I mean, you've got to remember, I think the interesting thing, he did a series of interviews, obviously, this morning in recognition of that award. And sometimes you've got to realise where John really came from. He's now Aston Villa captain, you know, seasoned internationalist, one of the first names in Steve Clarke's sheet, you know, won the award 4 times. But this is a guy at one time, you know, was struggling in underage teams at St Mirren. And I think it's a great thing where, you know, if young kids are trying to get on at the moment and saying, well, Joe Bloggs is better than me, and Jimmy's better than me, and so and so and so and so. John McGinn is the sign that, remember when St Mirren sold John McGinn, he wasn't going down to England, he wasn't going to Celtic, he wasn't going to Rangers, he went to Hibs.
Yeah.
You know, it was a step up, don't get me wrong, it was a good, but he wasn't an immediate talent that everybody locked onto, and now he is.
And the one key element of it, which I think has been, you know, that learning curve that we're talking about, is people would talk about, okay, you know, he was able to use his fat backside to try and engineer possession at times. He's very strong, physical, but his distribution at times was suspect. And then slowly but surely you could start to see that element of his game. I still think he could score more goals than he does, although he scored 4 goals in his last 7 Scotland games, which is great going. But nevertheless, I think there's more to him. If somebody could say, look, John, as well as getting late into the box, you know, like Lampard, he could crack a few from the edge of the box, can't he?
Absolutely, it's a good technique. I think, I mean, the big backside thing is in no way derogatory. The big backside has a long and storied and illustrious Scottish football history, because the first person I ever think of when I come is Kenny Dalglish. The way he could shield the ball and move and create space for him, and others as well. I think John will know himself that they'll get better, because he just puts the work in. And if you put the work in, you've got a great chance of becoming better and stronger. He's in a good place at Villa at the moment under Unai Emery. Has really turned the fortunes of that club around. They're going for European competition. Getting into a European competition will lift the whole players again, because it's a different learning curve. And he's barring injury, he's a mainstay of the Scotland team.
Yes, absolutely. Interesting to see.
And a good guy as well, Peter.
Yes, absolutely. We've had him on the show. He's been absolutely top drawer. It'd be interesting to see who the other awards are handed out to by the Scottish Football Writers Association. We did mention, Hugh, that you were along there at the PFA Scotland Player of the Year Awards on Sunday night. So this one at the end of May is where all the hacks get to, put their votes together and come up with the winners. So it'll be interesting to see who gets it, and if there's any difference between what was handed out last Sunday. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I think Kyogo swept the board last Sunday in 2 different awards. He swept the board at the Celtic Player of the Year, and then he won the main award at the PFA award as well. I would think his only real strong challenge at the press award would be Callum McGregor.
Yeah, okay.
I would think that would be the only one he'd challenge him.
I'll tell you, Hugh, we were talking about, as we not, I don't even think wind down, as we get ready for what I call winding up the pressure pot and the stress factor of the end of the season. Okay, Celtic are the champions, but there's so much more at stake in the Premiership for the teams, trying to avoid the relegation this next 3 games, which is huge. We've also got a brilliant finish to the Women's League as well, which you couldn't wish anything better.
And all the playoffs.
And I was just about to say to you, all the playoffs. Throw in today, James Bisgrove has been talking, the Rangers CEO, about the way ahead for Rangers, and over and above that, as well as Champions League football. You always get the odd mad quote here and there, and we've got all of that in today's show, and managers and players interviews. So it's well worth sticking with us for all the content. We deliver it to you 24/7, and of course, thank you to everyone who's providing us with the support and subscribing as well. So, looking at it, Hibs take on Rangers at the weekend. And in fact, can I just mention, it's a year to the very day since Rangers played in the Europa League final in Seville. They lost on penalties, but you just can't help but feel, I always look back and I think, a yard longer leg, and Kent scores the winner for Rangers.
Well, my wee pal Andy that went to the World Cup with is a Rangers fan, and he went to Seville, and that's the one that keeps him awake at night. You know, is the chance in extra time, rather than what happened in penalties. The chance in extra time. That's the one that keeps, and I think that'll be the one that sticks with most Rangers. Because there was no way back from that.
No, and do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Gascoigne against West Germany, or Germany.
The stud length, sliding in.
To take them through to the European Championships in 2000, what was it?
No, that would be 96 to take them against Germany.
Yeah.
Bertie Vogts' Germany, Peter, in the final.
Yes, yeah. Can you think of any other really close misses like that were absolutely agonising?
Oh, goodness. That's one we'll come back to.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
I'll let my head percolate an
acceptable rate, other than that, apart from Hibs versus Rangers, and Hibs have a tough run-in to try and close that gap on Hearts, Hugh, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But Rangers CEO James Bisgrove has been speaking for the first time about more than a few issues. He's obviously placed an emphasis on winning trophies. Financial stability will be a key. Developing the stadium, safe standings on the agenda as well. Better engagement with the fans and the media, and better player trading. So here's the key points from his discussion. Wants to have a dominant Rangers in Scotland with a clear strategy through until 2025. And he's outlined 4 pillars of financial sustainability: season ticket revenue, which is the backing of the fans, commercial revenue, European matchday revenue, and player trading model. He wants a constructive dialogue on safe standing, and he aims to improve engagement and communication with the media and fans, outlining his plans for quarterly CEO fans forum and implementation of a fan advisory board, which is nice. I mean, I think they're all 4 or 5 very good points that he wants to set out to try and achieve. If that's the manifesto, then I welcome it, Hugh, because at times I think previous boards, and I think James deserves a tremendous amount of credit for having the guts to say it, but I think previous boards have adopted a policy of picking fights with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, they did, and you'll see that because there's still ongoing litigation with various people. It's still going and being a drain on certainly the club's finances and maybe even their energy as well. I mean, I like it's necessarily short on detail, that Peter. He's not going to come out and he's got to just get his message across. The message I would get from that is new start. Clear the board. And the second one,
you said it's short and detail. What is it? What detail does it need to have in a situation like he's starting out with a blank piece of paper and saying, "Here's what I want to try and rectify."
Well, what he's doing is he's just dealing with themes. You know, when you say, I mean, it's great to say we want to be the dominant team in Scotland.
We want to win the league.
But what you've got to do is how you're going to get there, and there's got to be detail. How do you get there? As much as the manager going to get, because we're talking about 2025, how much is he going to get in the short term? Because if you're talking about 25, you're talking about transfer window 23, transfer window at the end of 23, transfer window summer of 24. So you may be, and then the winter, so you may be talking about 4 transfer windows if you're talking about by 2025.
Yeah.
So you're talking about how much money is he going to get? Where's that money coming from precisely? Because it's all right saying the pillars are season ticket money, but that horse has been flawed. Rangers fans, to their eternal credit, sell it out all the time. So there's no room for getting more revenue out of that. So what I think is most interesting about it is the new approach in that he's saying, right, we're not going to go picking fights. We're not going to go antagonising supporters, which they've done. We're going to have more engagement. I think the things before he came on board, I think the news that John Bennett had met Club 1872, which is rightly or wrongly seen as closely allied with Dave King. I think that was a beneficial move because it showed that it's a club that's wanting to, not quite seek compromise, but seek some conciliation, probably the better word. So I think that's good. I think that's the way forward. But you and I know, what in Scottish football, in fact, in any football, what it all boils down to is winning. And problem one is, how do you get to be the dominant team in Scottish football.
Yeah.
And I'll be the one that's exercising the mind of McWheel.
Well, that's the point that has not been mentioned on that list of key points that he wants to attack, and I think it's the one that's going to have to materialise over the next few years, if not pretty soon, is investment from outside sources. Again, you know, there's been investment from key Rangers fans who've dipped their hand in their pocket to take them through difficult periods and help the managers like Steven Gerrard win the league. But I do think that's something, you can have all the commercial ideas you want and it might generate some cash. Obviously you're looking at the season tickets, as you've said, and if they get to the group stage of the Champions League, that's a huge shot in the arm, Hugh. But I still think to achieve point number one, which is to make Rangers the top team in Scotland again, I think there needs to be something coming from an outside source.
Yeah, and what you've had over many years is outside sources coming in and putting money in, but then leaving, you know, just saying, woof, enough's enough. And what you've got is the share issues, which are, you know, which are basically the softest of loans that you can get, but and which will be, you know, be looked upon, you know, quite quizzically by UEFA under financial fair play as well. So they've really got to find a model of sustainability and stick to it, Peter. And that's got difficulties because in many areas they've tapped the well. I mean, in season ticket holder, which is a huge thing in Scotland, not so big in the big five leagues because it's broadcasting and merchandising that brings their major money in. But if your season ticket money is maxed out already, and you don't want to increase the prices for obvious reasons, tough times in Scotland, that's a major area where you just got to suck up and say, well, that is one of the pillars, but it's one of the pillars we can't really much improve on. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think over and above that, I mean, I think I wouldn't in any way belittle the communications with the press and the media, but I think, you know, Nick Thompson, who's the PR guy at the moment, is a very nice lad and very positive and helpful. I think there's been a real sea change in the club that way, and I think, you know, if they get a situation where, as you say, they're not combative and people can, and remember, by the way, Hugh, the one thing I would point out here for those of a sane mind is you can actually offer an opinion or an observation or a critique on whether it's a game or a strategy or whatever, or a manager or a player. You can offer that without getting a situation which I think, you know, is really strong in this country, especially in the west of Scotland, where tribalism kicks in and there's a few dafties who all give it quick, get him banned, we don't like his opinion, get him banned, there was a period where I felt as if they were like Captain Mannering, get him on the list and don't tell him your name, Pike. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now I like what James Bisgrove's got to say. Nobody needs to suck up to him. I mean, at the end of the day, if he builds that communication, Rangers will get positive PR out of it. Because that when you build relationships with people, you become friendly with them, you break down barriers, that happens.
And then there's a bit of understanding of what you're trying to do, and a bit of understanding about the difficulties you face. I think it's interesting engaging with the fans as well, because there's been a disconnect there.
Well, so a lot of them have been really unhappy.
There's been a disconnect, and I think that's, you know, addressing some of the concerns there. But the important thing, Peter, as we all know, it's all great stuff and that, but the noise around Rangers and around any club, you know, that seeks to win leagues, is when you don't win a league. That's when the noise starts. Any chief executive will tell you, seeing the most important thing that's happening is what's happening on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing that Michael Beale highlighted is they want to get their business done quickly already. Jose Cifuentes, Ecuador international, has been linked with a deal being done imminently. So you can tell that Michael Beale wants them all in quickly.
He needs them in quickly, and his problem is he needs them in quickly because he wants to bed in, because there's not a wee position where they can start slowly and, you know, and just build up to a crescendo. Europe's quick and right on top of them, and more that you're seeing with Celtic and Rangers, and the chasm between the rest of it, is you can't drop points early on because you'll not get them back. So he needs to get them in quickly. I'm mildly surprised at how quickly they seem. I mean, there's not, there's not official guys holding the scarf out at Murray Park or Auchenhowie at the moment, but there seems to be signs that that's going to happen imminently, and that's very positive for Rangers and Rangers support, because Michael Beale's operating in a market where it's going to be a lot of free transfers, and guys have got a lot of options.
Yeah.
So getting them tied up quickly, is absolutely essential, I think, for Rangers.
Better strategy. Okay, you can give us your view on that as well. Thanks to so many people who've been indulging in a little bit of what I call nostalgia, memorabilia, get into the memory banks and think about things. Brian H says, and he's 100% correct, Scotland versus Brazil, West Germany, Bremner.
Great shout.
If he scores, Scotland beat Brazil 1-0.
And then
we're
into the next round.
That for me, I don't know about you, Hugh, and I'm leaving myself wide open to criticism here, but I think that's the best ever Scotland squad we've taken to a World Cup, and I might be open to criticism because I have to remind you that the 78 side had near enough 10 players who were all going to feature or had already won major European finals.
Exactly.
So
the 78 team had Ruffy though.
Well, that's a good point you make, actually.
The 74 had... it was Harvey in goals, wasn't it?
David Harvey. And he played I think he might have played in the 1975 European Cup final for Leeds. I might be wrong.
It might do, because
could have been Gary Sprake or something like that. But anyway,
but that's a great shout in Billy Bremner. That's what we're looking for. Misses that just changed history.
Yes. Have you got a few more? Someone that just could have scored a goal that would have literally changed the outcome of a major game, or just a classic game down through the years. We've come up with Gascoigne. Brian's mentioned Billy Bremner, and of course the first one we mentioned there was Ryan Kent in that final. So
there's another one is John Hughes through 1-1 Milan 1970 extra time against Feyenoord, and the goalkeeper saved it.
Yeah, okay, there you are. That's a good shout as well, Hugh.
And Yogi remembered that to the end of his days, God bless him.
Yeah,
you remembered that.
Good shout. Of the games at the weekend that really do have something at stake, I think everybody's looking forward to the games, because in the Premiership in Scotland, here's the fixtures and here are the key games. Well, Hearts against Aberdeen is blistering, can't wait. Tynecastle for that one. It's a 12:30 kickoff. Then you get Celtic St Mirren, which probably doesn't really have anything at stake. Kilmarnock against St Johnston. I beg your pardon. St Mirren fans would love for St Mirren to go there and win, and it would certainly put them further up that table as they are in the top six. But my apologies if people think it's not quite cutthroat, if I can back up what I was saying. Kilmarnock against St Johnston, equally so. If Kelly were to win that, St Johnston would be right in the mire, and maybe Derek McInnes would breathe a lot easier. Livingston against Dundee United. Well, Dundee United somehow have to hope that Livingston continue this dismal run. Motherwell against Ross County, obviously. Ross County, and the fight back is coming from Malky Mackay. And Hibs against Rangers on the Sunday. Well, if Hibs have any aspirations of leapfrogging their great rivals, got to win that one. Hearts against Aberdeen. Our man Adam Binney was in the capital today.
Hearts take on Aberdeen at Tynecastle on Saturday, and as far as the race for third goes, it all comes down to this. If Hearts win, they go to within 2 points of Aberdeen, and the chase is on going into the final two matches. But if they lose, then it's mathematically over. They cannot finish in that crucial third place Europa League qualifying position come the end of the season. It has massive implications for Hearts, but also for their current interim boss, Stephen Naismith. He was asked if he thinks this match could decide his future as a potential permanent boss of Hearts, and here's what he said.
Without a shadow of a doubt, I think that all along the club asked me to take the team at the end of the season, and then we'll review things at the end of the season. We're halfway along that. These next 3 games are going to, without doubt, have an impact on what happens, but that might not just be on results. It's about our performances, it's the way we play, how we do in the games. There's loads of aspects to what the decision will be made by the club, but for me it's been a brilliant experience so far. I've loved every minute of it, and I think I've done a good job so far.
Peter Haring was shown a red card against St Mirren at the weekend, but Hearts have since appealed that decision and they were successful. The decision was overturned despite a VAR review taking place at the time did not deem the referee's decision to be incorrect. So manager Stephen Naismith naturally is worried that this could have a negative impact on the perception of VAR in Scotland.
But not just only on that. I was right in front of the decision on Saturday. I could see it was not a red card. The fourth official's right next to me. The ref's up at play. There's an assistant official on the side of the pitch, all with great views of the incident, who all miss it, and the decision's made. But then we've got the fail-safe that hopefully gets all these big decisions right. To fail as well is really disappointing. It's really disappointing, and what it does is it makes people not believe in it.
Yeah, two quick points there, two good points that he made from that interview is quite simply, people are losing faith with it if you've got, first of all, the ref makes a decision everybody's looking at and thinking you've gone a wee bit rash, and you've got other officials that could have helped them, and then as Stephen's saying, there's a safety net, there's another safety net to stop them having to go to an appeal, which now has ridiculed both sets of safety nets, referee, other officials, VAR, none of them got it right, and the decision is overturned.
Yeah, 2 points to address on that as well. Is first, some of us never had any faith in VAR anyway, and I'm not saying that.
No, I know.
And the second point is, everybody said, oh yeah, this is going to be great, it's going to help the referees. And what we're increasingly finding, Peter, particularly in Scotland, is that it's putting referees in the dock. It's showing referees up, rather than, there's decisions being made that are mistakes, which are fair enough, but the fail-safe of VAR is either not coming in, or when it does come in, is making an erroneous decision stand. So I think Ian Maxwell said it would take the first 3 months would be awful or horrendous or difficult, whatever it is. The whole season has been really difficult for VAR, and I think it points to, and it's easy having a bash at referees, and I don't mean to, but the whole thing points to, it needs to be a sea change in refereeing. There needs to be even more training, more intensive training. I think we need to bring people from outside in saying, right, it's not a perfect thing, but where are we falling short? What we could do better? What's from an outside perspective? How can refereeing in Scotland be improved? Yeah,
and the other point that he made there, which I think is well worthy of our consideration. I'm a big fan of Stephen Naismith. I really hope he does well. It would be lovely to see him get the job, and then interesting to see if he's allowed to put a backroom staff together that could give him a fighting chance of not being subject to the abuse of the short-term fixed nature that we have in football at the moment.
Yeah, I would consider myself a friend, so my opinion might be invalidated because of that. I think the I'd love to see him get a chance, but the difficulty for Hearts now at the moment is, at one point in the season, we were just saying, I was just saying to myself, Hearts are certain for third place. I didn't even think it would be a race. You've got to remember that the team that might do them out of a third place is Aberdeen, who at one time were in absolute disarray. It's not that long ago since Darvel were beating them 2-0 in the Scottish Cup. So I think that's been a shock to the Hearts system, and it's taken them time to galvanise. I think it's crucial for him going forward that, first of all, before you go to end the season stuff, that they win. Yeah. On Saturday. He's got to win on Saturday.
What do you think will happen with Liam Scales? Do you think Celtic will allow him to go and Aberdeen will be able to snip him up?
I think so. Yeah. I think Liam Scales. I think Aberdeen are interested in him. I think Celtic have got many options there, and probably bringing in other options as well. I think if somebody asked me what my punt would be in that, I would say yes, Scales stays at Aberdeen.
Yeah, okay. If the battle for third is going down to the wire, then what about at the bottom end of the table? Of course, Motherwell are in action at the weekend, and Kerry Pollock was out there at Fir Park.
This weekend, Motherwell have the opportunity to cement themselves in 7th if they beat Ross County on Saturday. But despite being far from the drop zone, Stuart Kettlewell says he won't let the standards slip as we near towards the end of the season.
I think when you see all our reaction at half-time against St Johnston, that probably indicates to you how motivated we are and how well we want to do. I have seen situations where players sort of come off and shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's not our day. I don't accept that off anybody. I don't expect it off myself. I don't expect it off anybody at the football club. But again, I keep saying I've not had to fight too hard with any of the players or the staff with that sort of mentality.
This week, Max Johnson has been linked with a move to Norwich City, but the Steelman boss says he hasn't been involved in any conversations surrounding the youngster's future.
Pass. I don't know. I don't know what I would expect, that if someone was visiting another football club, if that was the case, that there would be some sort of dialogue there. There's been absolutely no dialogue from Max or his representatives or anything like that to tell us that was happening. Again, I'm very, very old school in my way of thinking here, that if something like that was to come about, then I generally think picking up the phone, a text message, a face-to-face, something like that would come our way. So I can't confirm that or deny it. I'm not entirely sure whether that has been the case, but I certainly know the process that I would expect to happen if that was the situation.
Well, fair play to Stuart. He might consider himself old school. I consider him just someone who is looking for a bit of manners and a bit of courtesy.
Yeah, but it's
in short supply these days.
It's football PLC, and I always say it's an absolute. We all would love to have played professional football, etc. That misty-eyed romantic side of you, but it's a brutal business. Brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what Stuart Kettlewell's doing. I don't think they'll switch off. I think the real incentive for Van Veen is to just keep banging in the goals to try and set a wee record.
Yeah, and then as well with Van Veen is to, I know Stuart was talking about life-changing money, etc., but there'll be people looking at Van Veen with a keener eyes than they were might be expected for a Scunthorpe free transfer. So he's revitalised his career and people will be looking at him.
And of course the irony won't be lost on everyone that Stuart Kettlewell could sink Ross County into a perilous position. They're just above it at the moment, but boy is it tight.
It's really tight as well, and I think that great things, isn't it? Any managers talk about the end of the season, there's twists and turns to come, but there's no many games to have twists and turns. I think Ross County's result last week was a lifesaver, an absolute lifesaver, and it gives them a real shot. And the great thing about Ross County can say, we can talk about Van Veen, he's been terrific for Motherwell. Ross County can sit, if you're in that dressing room and you're a fan, there's goals in this team.
Yeah.
There's goals. We can score.
I just wonder about the incentive for a Livingston side that I don't like to use the phrase they've downed tools, but I know some of our pundits have mentioned it. Livingston take on Dundee United, and I think the Tangerines boss Jim Goodwin reckons that they have the greater incentive in this one to get the win.
I think it's fair to say, and I'm sure Davy Martindale won't mind me saying, I think the game is more important for us in terms of what the points mean to us as opposed to what they mean to Livingston. But knowing Davy like I do over the years, managing against him, I know he's a very proud guy, and I know he'll be extremely disappointed with recent results, and I'm pretty sure he'll be demanding a reaction from his players.
Well, I wonder what reaction Jim Goodwin will be getting, because now we're getting to the point where after those 3 consecutive wins there's rumblings of discontent again, and he's now right back behind the 8 ball with this squad that at times for me just underperforms, and you can look and say to yourself, if you've got goal scorers, you've got a chance of getting away from it. But the one thing that negates goal scorers is a weak back line, and boy have they got one.
Yeah, they seem to have these collective sort of brain goes missing moments, and can lose 2-3 goals pretty quickly. This game, Jim Goodwin will be sitting thinking and looking at this, I think, and saying, well, out the bottom 6, the most sort of, I would say, disappointing team since has been Livingston, in that since the split, I think not reaching the top 6 has had an effect on morale there. And I think it's not about down in tools, it's just about that level, just dipping that wee bit.
Yeah.
And they've had a couple of poor results since the split.
And they've got that much of a cushion, really.
It doesn't matter.
You know?
And I think he'll be hoping that continues for at least another 90 minutes. Because when we're talking about Hearts must win, I think Dundee United in a situation of this is a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
This is the 3 point, and we must come back up the road with 3 points on Saturday.
And hope Motherwell will do them a turn.
Yep.
Okay, interesting times at the bottom end. Of course, let's not forget, Killie are not out of it. They've got a game against St Johnston, albeit at home, which seems to be the key element for everybody that suggests that Killie might just get away from this.
Well, Killie's, the good turn for Killie was 3 games at home out of the 5, because they've had it the other way. You're looking at it and saying, oh my goodness, because their whole away form has been abysmal. This is can they drag St Johnston back into it as well?
Yeah, who knows? What about Celtic? I mean, the incentive is the cup, and they certainly want to continue to try and show the form. What was your take?
My very much advanced years, I was, slightly wry glances at people talking it's a meaningless game. Because I don't think you can ever say that about a Celtic Rangers game, because for the sheer fact of if Rangers had lost last week, can you imagine what Bisgrove's message this week would have to be to fans?
Okay, that makes it not a meaningless game, right? Okay. I give you Rangers in the 9 in a row, won title after title after title, then all of a sudden they've won the title, they've worked really hard all season, some of them go in the lash, the incentive is not really to play at the absolute maximum levels, and they'll lose at Hampden 3-0,
yep.
Right? So it's probably just maybe too strong to say it's a meaningless game, but Rangers would want it for a shot in the arm. Celtic, on the other hand, Ange Postecoglou doesn't like losing them, but I don't think he looked overly perturbed that it didn't go his way.
Well, you were talking to him on Sunday, and I thought he was really good on Sunday when he was talking to you, and he said, this hurts.
Yeah.
And I get, I could see the hurts. I think one of the things you're talking about, actually going into the detail and the actual minerals of the match, as they say, you're looking at him and saying, well, he must have been disappointed by the contributions of some of what we call the second stringers. I think he'd been looking for a lot more from certain players, and I think in terms of strife, I think that's when Tommy Burns used to say all the time, that's when you learn when you get beat.
Yeah.
That's when I'm looking at the Celtic players coming off the park. That's what I'm learning about them. When they get beat. And I think he learned some stuff about his players, and some of it wasn't pleasant stuff either. So whether that impacts on what he does in the summer, I don't know. But I would imagine that, we know Celtic have won the league. We know in terms of points accruing, it meant that in that sense it was definitely meaningless. But I still think there was great lessons to be learned from it.
Yeah, well, there's 2 trophies in the bag, and Captain Callum McGregor reckons that there's a real positivity around securing the 3rd one.
If you start to let these things fester, then you're in a bit of trouble. So I think at this point in the season, it's much more important for us to be looking at the positives. We've got 2 trophies in the bag. We're playing for a 3rd one at the end of next week. So there's only positive things to speak about within this group of players at the minute.
Yeah, so a treble still beckoning, and still a bit of positivity, an incentive really to try and finish the season strongly and put that Rangers result behind them. That's for St Mirren. I think Stephen Robinson is looking now to try and get strikers, defenders in. That's where he wants to strengthen. He's confirmed he's open talks with 4 signing targets, but the likes of Curtis Main, Charles Dunn, Joe Shaughnessy, they'll be leaving in the summer.
Yeah, I thought he was interesting again when you're talking to Tony Fitzpatrick on Sunday, the great hero of St Mirren, one of the greatest players ever to wear that black and white strip for St Mirren, and Toney was saying that this was one of the best St Mirren teams he'd seen, and I thought it was an interesting thing, and I thought that spoke more, not just about the quality of the team, but the sort of tenacity, the efficiency, the belief in the manager and the manager's belief in the players to set up a system, and St Mirren have had a terrific season, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stephen Robinson's a great manager, and he's worked wonders on a very limited budget as well, and players that maybe he would like to have kept hasn't been able to do that, wants to obviously shuffle the pack, has to cut the budget. Brilliant job. Although remember, by the way, Hugh, as you know in our fraternity, you don't believe everything that comes out of the mouth of a manager, a player or a legend. And when Toney turned around and said, you know, it's up there with the best of the best he's ever seen, I had to have a wee word with him and say, come on, get a grip of your head. McAvenny, McGarvey, McDougall, Fitzpatrick, Jackie Copeland, hello.
Yeah, I think he was being
gracious.
But I think he was pointing on to the bigger point, that just how he was trying to put in context how great a season it had been for St Mirren.
Yeah.
You know, given, I would have thought at the beginning of the season, St Mirren would have been definitely, I don't know where I put them in the predictor, but it'd definitely been a bottom 6 team for me. They were a team that if they had flirted with relegation, would you be shocked? No. And instead of that, they've had this super season where they've sailed into the top 6. By the way, not playing kind of backs against the wall football, playing really good front foot football. Robinson wanting to use his big men up front, having really great performances throughout the team, O'Hara, etc. Mains had an excellent season with them as well. So, yeah, I think he was more talking about that, because if you talk about the actual quality of St Mirren's teams in the past, there's been some very good players at Love Street, as we.
Well, I was only pointing out the players that had played in Tony's side, you know, and I forgot Ian Scanlon and Billy Abercrombie and Doug Sumner and Peter Weir,
Junior Bone.
Yeah, let's not go through them all. Although, can I just say, in tribute to the 1987 side, Ian Ferguson, who's got went on to play for Rangers, got a medals cabinet to die for, and Paul Lambert as well.
To Paul Lambert.
Yeah, but what did he do in the game? So there you are. Anyway, it was still great to see him. I love Toney Fitzpatrick. ScotRail have announced the Inverness Express for the Scottish Cup final fans of Inverness. Now, this will depart at 3 minutes past 11 and arrives at 2:21. Right? So there's a wee walk, time for a sing-song, bush into the stadium. The return journey, 8:48, and arrives in Inverness at 2 minutes past 12 in the morning. Now, Hugh, the ticket for this is discounted rail cards and travel passes are not valid on this special.
My seniors' palaces.
Take a guess at how much you think this ticket is.
Oh goodness, I never noticed that tiny little detail.
Yeah. Well, what would be an acceptable one? You're going down, it's a return ticket, it's Inverness.
As a PR gesture, I would think if it was £50 return, I think that'd be acceptable.
Yeah. £76.90, Hugh. I mean, for God's sake, you know, in the current climate, it's, and by the way, I don't think, can we be hypercritical of the rail company who's merely putting a gesture towards putting on the specials and they have to cover the costs? Is it a case of looking at the SFA and saying, come on? Is it a case of looking at the discussions that went on with the TV companies? Come on. But £76.90, Hugh, come on.
Well, your ticket, the ticket will be the best part. The ticket's best part of £40, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're talking about £110 before you buy a programme, as you say, or have a pint and a way down. So it's an expensive day. It's an expensive day. But I must remember, I once went up to Inverness and to interview Mr. Foster, Richard Foster. He was playing in Ross County, and I dawdled along the train station to buy a ticket for the way down, and I was absolutely stunned. They weren't over £100 for a single to Glasgow that day. And I went, no, just I'll get the old mega bus if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the playoffs? Airdrie edged it 1-0.
I fancied Airdrie.
So did I.
And the reason I fancied Airdrie, I'd said that I don't think there's that many goals in the Accies. And this is said by a man who watched them score 5 last week. I was at the Accies game against Alloa, which was worth a book rather than a match report with what was going on then. But Airdrie, I've watched Rhys McCabe's side a couple of times this year, and they've got goals right across that front three. They're a team that like to go for it. They're a team that you're not surprised when they suffer, when they knock 5 or 6 past Falkirk. Because that's the way they want to play. So I think there's still work to do. It's only 1-0, and they've got to go to New Douglas Park. But I think the ball's in their court.
Okay, now Hugh, I don't think you could ask for any better PR for the SWPL than a title race with 3 potential winners.
On the last day.
The champions Rangers can retain it, Celtic could win it for the first time, Glasgow City could, I think, win it for the 15th out of the last 16 seasons. It's good going, and Celtic have to beat Hearts and hope that Rangers draw or beat Glasgow City on Sunday, and there's a 1-goal difference between Celtic and Rangers in the points. Of course, Fran Alonso, the Celtic manager of the women's team, is all geared up for that nail-biting finish.
With so much at stake is a possibility of achieve a dream. That's a dream. If we manage to do that in front of our crowd, another country record crowd celebrating something here at Paradise. I mean, if you dream something, it would be that. You and me dreaming a decision would be best scenario possible. That would be that. That is like in a movie. Just obviously we don't know how it's going to end. We don't know the end yet. But what we can control is try to play a very good game.
Yeah, try to play the good game. I fear for the helicopter driver at this one. It is, isn't it?
The one that was spinning around. A terrific finish to the season, and so much at stake, and so many great backstories to it as well. I know, again, Glasgow City have a storied history of 14 consecutive titles and etc. I think this would be the greatest title.
Yeah,
I honestly do, because of the money that's been thrown into Rangers in particular and Celtic. I think this would be the greatest title, and they're not out of it either.
Yeah, a wee bit of talking to do, Hugh, before we go, and we might as well just discuss Champions League football, because if there was a disappointment in Inter against AC Milan on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday night I thoroughly enjoyed the game between Manchester City and Real Madrid, because City eventually extracted their revenge on Real Madrid for that late show last season, and their movement and their finishing was clinical, and it was a joy to watch at times.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those. I think it's almost a historic result in the way that I think the penny's finally dropped now, and I think it's dropped in around the world. That not only is there a European Super League at the moment, and it's the English Premier League.
Yeah.
But there's a European super club at the moment, and it's Manchester City.
You think they'll win the treble?
I think they will now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always the possibility with Pep Guardiola that he overthinks it. We all know that he's already been beaten in Champions League with a great Barcelona team against a 10-man Inter. So I think Pep's always got the capacity to maybe overthink and tweak when he doesn't need to. But I think that team is so much. I thought Real Madrid, just with the news of Real Madrid, the experience, the way they've just completely walked that road for so many years, would cause them problems on Wednesday night. I thought it would still be a tight end. They were just blown away, Peter. They were just blown away.
Yeah, absolutely. And William Smith, and I think he's every right to absolutely cane me on this one, says Real Madrid got pumped, Peter. I thought they might sneak it last night, but because, and the reason why I get sidetracked by the basis of watching them, games against Chelsea, games against Liverpool, certainly the game to a lesser extent against Celtic, where they just waited and bided their time. Courtois produced 2 worldies, and you're thinking, this is them, they'll just pick them. But Manchester City, the difference this time around, as Pep Guardiola pointed out, was the incentive was to ease the pain of last season and get a bit of revenge.
It's really tough, lose the way we lose, and I think in that moment we have to swallow poison, you have to swallow everything and be kind. In football and sport always give you another chance. And when the draw with Madrid, I said, yeah, I want it. I want it because then I think today was there, everything. The energy that we had last season during 1 year, that being criticized these players, but didn't have character, didn't have anything. When we lose because it's football, today was there, and I'm very pleased for the whole organization, for the chairman, owner, especially the players and all the staff behind.
Yeah, so this could be City's year. No surprise, one of the greatest managers in the history of football, Carlo Ancelotti, was gracious in defeat.
Tonight, Man City deserved to win because they played better than us. And so last season was different. This season they deserved to reach the final and to fight for the final. They were better than us, as we were better than them last season.
Yeah, they just didn't get going, Real Madrid, at all. There was no real fluency to their play. They were all over the place at times.
But I think the significant, when I was talking about a historic result, I think what it does, it was the imprimatur of everybody was saying it, and I would be the same. Well, you can't count Real Madrid out, in the Champions League, just the history and that. And I think, see, when he's talking about last year we were better than Man City, and Man City this year better, I think Man City have improved incredibly, even though they were a good team last year. I think they've notched up another level with having Haaland. I think Haaland gives them so many options that teams have to guard against, makes Man City even more difficult to play with. I think Gundogan, Silva and others, John Stones for example, who's always much criticised, have had terrific seasons, and I think the team has come on, whereas Real Madrid, I think, have regressed, if only slightly, but they've regressed, and they've regressed simply because I'm not going to write obituaries for Tony Kroos or Modric because they're still terrific players, but not in the stage of the year, their careers where they're going to get better, are they?
No, absolutely not. There's Europa League semi-final and Europa Conference semi-final second legs to come, which is certainly going to be interesting as well. It's always a tall order to try and get yourself into 3 nights of football, Hugh, then the playoffs on the Friday, and then
back to work on Saturday.
Back to work on the Saturday. I think if you try and engineer that, you're either single
or about to be
single, to be perfectly honest with you. But Bayer Leverkusen Roma, who would bet against Mourinho landing the Europa League? They've got the edge. Can the Germans turn it around? Who knows? Seville against Juventus is poised at 1-1. So I am going to give you my option on this. I'm going to say, and I might be wrong, Seville against Roma.
That's me.
Yeah?
Yep, that's mine. I think Seville are very cute in this competition, very aware of its demands and how to negotiate those demands. And Jose, in this situation, were a decent Roma team, not a trailblazing one. I think he's got enough in the bank to get to the final as well.
Yeah, and if I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and you know what, Hugh?
I'm the same here, I know where you're going.
I might actually just get a ticket and go to Prague if West Ham get there. They're 2-1 up against Alkmaar, and obviously Basel have got their 1 foot in the final. They're 2-1 up against Fiorentina, and it's at home.
Basel was slightly surprised me. I thought, I know Fiorentina haven't had a stellar season either, but I thought they may have enough still to play for. But yeah, very much rooting for Davy Moyes. I think what David has done under extraordinary circumstances at West Ham, under a lot of constant criticism, I think he's had a terrific season there because he's kept him away from relegation and he's on the cusp of a European final, and I think that's good going.
Yeah, and so does David Moyes.
For our club to have finished twice very close to the Europa League, but eventually get into the Conference League, we were thrilled to have European football again. It's so important for our football club, and the players have done incredibly well over the 2 years, better than I thought. I thought it would be difficult for us to adapt. If anything, the harder part is having to play on a Thursday, then play on a Sunday in the Premier League it takes its toll because there is no games. You can't come back from a Thursday game and then find yourself having quite a comfortable 5-1 win the day after.
Oh, I'd love to see them. I'd love to see them win through. Would you, Hugh?
I would, absolutely, and I think he makes a really good point about the difficulties of being in Europe, because a lot of people would have thrown in the towel in Europe, thinking, Sunday's a big game. Going to Southampton, having Leeds at the London Stadium, or travelling up to Old Trafford. That's the games. We've got to keep in this league, and there's no respite for West Ham. West Ham haven't got a squad where they could say, we'll drop 5 or 6 of the starters and we can still beat Bournemouth, for example. They just haven't got that. So I think the dual achievement, I know that's not quite there yet, but the achievement of staying in the Premier League and the achievement of being on the brink of a European final is terrific stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugh, a couple of things to get your thoughts on before we go. Partick Thistle against Ayr United tomorrow night. Where's your money?
Sensible money says Partick Thistle, doesn't it? With the momentum, the way they dismiss Queen's Park, etc., etc. But Ayr United have been serving up, you know, the odd surprise this season.
And they've got the boy.
And they've got the boy you were talking to on Sunday again.
Yeah, engagemet.
I think it'll be closer than people think. And I've got a hunch for Ayr United, surprisingly, even though Partick Thistle must go with the momentum Thistle have had and the run they've had of late under Chris Doolan has been terrific.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Partick Thistle on this. My apologies to any United fans, it's all about opinions. You'll get them on this programme, and of course we read out as many of your opinions as we possibly can, all the legitimate ones, and as ever all we do is ask you to join the football family. It's absolutely free. I don't know many channels in Scotland that are giving you that commitment. You can have radio programmes, but when you look at the commitment of football on television and in that format, then we're certainly providing you with unique video content that you can watch, and of course over and above that you've got a football show that's on with special guests as well, and on a Saturday at 4 o'clock you've got half-time reports, full-time reports, and then the managers and players as well. It's well worth hitting the subscribe button to get our content. If you download the app, it's all there for you as well. A difficult one to comment on here, but Ivan Toney banned for 8 months, 232 breaches of betting regulations, and boy, he's paid a heavy price for it. But I would suggest to you, Hugh, everybody knows the rules before they do it.
Yep, but the thing about footballers, and you see, it's only a £5 flutter, it's all this. FIFA and UEFA are absolutely scared stiff of any betting scandal, because if you have a betting scandal, and Ivan Toney, we know, wasn't involved in one where he was betting against his own team, etc., etc. But if you got that, the whole integrity of the sport goes down the drain. We saw it with athletics, huge sport, its integrity suffered because of doping. They don't want the integrity of a result to be questioned. The ball's in the roof when that happens. So they're hitting it hard. People will say, though, hypocrisy, and I must admit I have a wry smile at that, because they're hammering Ivan Toney, but you just have to look at the billboards, you have to look at the advertising, you have to look at the search. There certainly seems to be a dichotomy over how they treat players in gambling and how they embrace it as a commercial revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. Money has a crazy way of throwing your morals and principles right out the door, and that certainly is the case with that, Hugh. As far as the quiz is concerned, we asked you a question with regards to obviously Manchester City. When did Manchester City win their only European trophy? And I bow to your intelligence, Hugh. Give us the answer.
1970.
1970 was indeed the answer, in the era of Bell, Lee and Summerby, and boy, what a team they had.
Oh, what a terrific team. They should actually have won a lot more, but English football then was a lot more competitive. I mean, you had, you're talking about 1970, Man City winning that competition, 69 of course. Manchester United had just won the European Cup, and then you were sliding into the eras of the Forests and the great Liverpool sides to come. And
let's not forget, the early 70s, you also had Leeds United there,
Chelsea,
getting stronger,
really
and Chelsea, you know. So there was good teams there with a good European pedigree. Yeah, listen, great days for British football. Never mind talking about English football then. Predominantly we focus on Scottish football. Hopefully you enjoyed the banter with Hugh. Ruffy will be back fighting fit, hopefully well, tomorrow with us, 100% back in the chair, alongside myself and Alison McConnell. Tam's still out in a golf course.
Oh, don't we know it?
Yeah, and some of the photographs lead me to believe that Tam needs to really reassess the type of people he's hanging about with. Is that fair?
I think that is fair. It's like the Beverly Hillbillies comes to mind.
That's exactly it, by the way. If you want to see the type of people that Tam McManus is out on the golf holiday with. Get the DVD Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, and the entire cast is playing golf with him. It's the only thing I can say to you. Anyway, apart from that, thanks to Hugh. Great chat. Always love the legend with me. And there's lots of great, exciting news coming up in PLZ Soccer. Hopefully you can stick with us. From Hugh and from myself, Peter Martin. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you tomorrow.